Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I am Pao from Creating Purpose with Pao, and I welcome you to the Spanglish World Network and Heart Network on Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download Single TV app on the respective app stores when you download it. Please, leave a comment and let us know how we're doing our job. Single TV is totally free. It's available in Google Chromecast, in Amazon Fire TV Stick, Roku sticks, and in all smart TVs from 2016 and forward. Thank you all for being here. I'm so happy to have our beautiful guest today, Ruth Pierce. She is a beautiful author, coach, public speaker who passionately develops people so they can soar in their relationships. So thank you for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Pal. And yes,
So
I so enjoyed being here with you. And we're going to have a great time today.
yes. I'm so happy to have you because a lot of people, including myself, needs this type of education, needs new strategies to implement into my life to better my relationships. So why are you so passionate about helping others with their relationship?
That's a good question, but it's got lots of little things that go out of it. And first of all, I want to say, have I always been good at relationships? No, absolutely not. If you would have seen me 25, 30 years ago, I was very passive, which means passive aggressive. And I didn't know how to make my relationships better. And I didn't know how important it was to have a relationship with myself, a healthy relationship with myself, because we all have a relationship with ourselves, but it's not always healthy. And so I started watching and I started reading. I'm an avid reader, but I started at that point reading some more nonfiction than fiction. And one of the first books that I think I read that really made a point with me was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And many of your audience would have read that. And it has so many golden nuggets in there. And I can't even say that, but one that sticks in my mind is realizing the abundance mentality versus the scarcity mentality. And that's a hard one to get into our system, into our belief system, but it's so important. And developing people is just part of who I am. I mean, years ago, I went to college to be a math teacher, which was developing math skills. And then I went into human resources and as a trainer first. And so I was developing people. And so that's just my overall umbrella of why I'm so passionate, because now I realize that I've got something to give other people and can help them take relationships to the next level.
Yes, and we all need that. I mean, I need it in the classroom. I need
Yes.
it, at home with my husband, with my children, my parents. So it's like, and that's kind of like truly the juice of life, the quality of our relationships. It's truly the quality of our life, more than my finances, more than our success at our professional life, our bank account. Sometimes we get lost seeking for that professional success,
Right.
for that big bank account, and we miss out uh, the beauty of life, which that's what I'm learning, that is the quality of our relationships, that at the end is what truly matter. So I so appreciate you being here to share with all of us your wisdom, because you've been married for like almost 50 years.
I have.
And
To the same guy.
yes, that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about that, because only 5% of the marriages truly get to the length of 50 years. So what is the attribute to this longevity?
Well, I want to say, first of all, there's got to be a commitment, because there's no marriage that's perfect. So each marriage is going to hit a rough patch, a rough spot. And it's that commitment that you have with each other that's going to help you over that. Now, that being said, I don't want the people listening to us, I don't want either you or I to feel like we have to put up with behavior that's not appropriate, because we don't. There are ways to handle it. And if you feel like you don't know how, then please get help. Because sometimes when we're in the middle of it, it's too overwhelming. And there's things that you need to look at. You need to look at what's going on in your life, where you're coming from. What do you feel about yourself? Do you feel like you're a doormat, that people are running over you? Or do you feel like you know who you are and you're secure in who you are? Because that's going to make a difference on how you address this. And I don't know if you want me to add something there or if you want to move on, Pal. I'll let you decide.
No, go ahead. Please go ahead. I mean, we need this. A lot of our audience need to know that commitment is number one.
Commitment
And
is yeah.
And whenever we're going through a hard situation, yeah, please. So if we're going through a tough situation, we need to see where we're coming from. Like if I'm being a doormat, like if I'm being, if they're stepping on me, like you were saying, or if I'm coming from a place where it's like, I know my value. I know who I am.
Right. And that is so important. And I'm going to go a completely different direction here for a minute, and you just shut me off when I get too long on one subject for you. But there's 3 types of people, roughly speaking, where we're at. And that is, we're either being wise, and if you're a person of faith and you're familiar with the Bible, then you're going to see these in Proverbs. But there's the wise person, the foolish person, and the evil person. And we treat each one differently. In a nutshell, the wise person is open to feedback and wants to adjust when they need to reach with reality, with truth, and they'll make positive changes. The foolish person does the exact opposite. It's not my deal. I don't want any feedback. I'm not responsible. I don't own this. And then the evil person is the one you just want to stay away from because they are out to hurt you. And you really do need to just stay away from them. But for the rest of us, we like to think we're wise. Oh, yeah, I take feedback well. But I think it's a continuum. And at any given time, between the foolish and the wise, you got foolish. I'm not sure how this works on this one, but you got foolish on one side and you've got wise on the other. And at any time, we fit somewhere on that line. Or we may have one area of our life that we're stuck in because it's a trigger to some hurt that we haven't processed. And in that area, we're not going to take feedback. So give yourself grace there, but be aware of that. But then also give the other person grace because they're on their own continuum, their own line. And sometimes they're going to be able to take feedback and sometimes they're not.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, it's like even now that I am an older adult, like I'm on my I'm 38. So I am becoming more aware of those triggers that you are talking about.
Right.
So sometimes my husband has triggered that trauma. And sometimes before I couldn't help, before I didn't know, but now I know better. So I do better. And I am aware now that, you brought this, now let me circle it around because we behave in a way that we were taught how to behave. Like
Yes.
somewhere, someone could be a movie, could be that you seen your aunt and your mom, someone in your life, there was a point where you adopted this behavior because it served you, because it brought you certainty, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if the husband triggers that behavior, I mean, triggers that trauma, your behavior has been learned already. So you automatically behave in a way that you taught yourself how to behave to bring certainty to your life.
Mhm.
And if that behavior is not serving our marriage, is not farthening our marriage, it's not nurturing it. So it would be wise for all of us today to be aware. It's like, okay, how do I react when he
Right.
does this? How do I
Mhm.
react? Is it, is this behavior serving our marriage? Is it nurturing our marriage? Because from experience, I'm talking from experience. It's like, oh, I had to be aware that it's like, oh, it's like, I'm going to be honest, like I learned from one of my mentors that whenever we get mad, it only lasts, like, biochemically speaking, it only lasts a couple of minutes, I'm sorry, like 2, 3 minutes.
Mhm.
After that, then it's like you choose to be mad. You choose to be in the mood. And then whenever I learned that, I was like, oh, so I'm choosing to act like a 2-year-old. So I've learned to better my I'm not there yet. I'm not all 100% there. But it's like I try to catch myself and it's like, okay, am I throwing a tantrum? It's like after 2, 3 minutes, like, is this serving me? But anyways, I just wanted to turn it around for a beautiful audience that if you're in that stage of maturing, improving, you know, pay attention to your thought behavior, how you react. Because when we get upset, biochemically speaking, your neurons are firing and wiring, but it only takes a couple of minutes. And after that, I've learned that it was my choice to stay in that mood, to stay mad.
Mhm.
And if it didn't, if it's not serving me, then I try to, like, okay, you have a conversation with myself to get out of it. Same thing with alcohol, right? Sometimes it's a thought behavior. You get into a fight with your spouse or someone you love, and then somewhere down the road you were taught that a drink would help,
Right.
maybe 2 drinks will help. So
Mhm.
that's just an example of a taught behavior and
Mhm.
becomes a habit. So if it's not serving us, then let's stop it. Learn to stop it and use something that truly nurture ourselves and our relationships.
Mhm. Can I add a couple things to that?
Yes, please, please, please.
One is a mantra that one of my spiritual mentors gave me, and I've used it multiple times, and it's our response to something is almost always more important than the something. Our response to something is almost always more important than the something. And I thought of that when you were talking about that anger, that the response was anger. Now, that's the initial thing. That's okay, but it doesn't need to go on and on and on and on. That initial anger is like a light on your dashboard that says something upset me. But then you have the choice to make it go on and on and on or to stop it.
Yeah.
And what you're saying too about, we've learned behaviors and we've learned beliefs. In fact, honestly, what we believe about something has more effect than anything else. And so if you want to change your behavior, don't try to focus on changing your behavior. Figure out what you are believing and what is the truth and what is the lie. And then say, lie, you have no place here.
Thank you for saying that, because a lot of people, you hear all men are equal, all men behave the same, you better watch out.
Mhm.
It's like all men will betray you. So you grow up, sometimes you adopt that belief and you're always on guard, because your
Right.
brain's trying to keep you safe. So you're not going to enjoy that relationship fully because you have to protect yourself. It's like we're always on, like, like walking
Hmm.
around in that relationship, hoping, waiting for that moment because you believe that he's going to betray you. He's going to do something to hurt you. So we don't get to enjoy that relationship fully.
That's very true. In everything that we're talking about, we've kind of focused in on the marriage, but it applies to all relationships. And you talked about your relationship in the classroom. I believe you're a teacher, science teacher, is that correct?
Yes,
And
yes.
so, yes, you have so much influence on every one of your students, and helping them to believe that they have more potential than they can see in themselves right now is just huge.
Yes.
And then as moms, as parents, dads, and then your relationship with your parents, we have these learned behaviors on what we think that relationship needs to be and how we need to behave. And the more secure we are with ourselves, then we get discernment on these other relationships on how vulnerable we can be, whether they're safe or not. And just like you made reference to the thing about all men will do that, if you find a man that you feel safe with, put your guard down.
And enjoy it.
Yeah, take
Enjoy
it
it.
to take it to the max. In fact, I'm going to take this a different direction if you don't mind.
Go for it.
And that is one of the things that I teach. I do a training, and eventually I'll get it online, but it isn't right now, other than just in like masterminds. But it's the 5 principles for thriving relationships that I learned the real way through my marriage that we've talked about, and then through being in HR. But one of these principles is you can be too dependent on a relationship. And think about that. Is that true? Yes.
Like codependent. Is that what
Yeah,
you
like
mean?
like a codependent, or something like that. Like if you're dependent on any relationship, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a kid, a parent. Now, granted, infants are dependent on their parents. They're dependent on their caregivers. We know that. But we've watched those infants grow into toddlers, into elementary age, into teenagers, and we'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. But if I'm too dependent on, say, my husband, whether it be emotionally or mentally, physically, providing for me, financially, or even spiritually, I won't address some of the things that need to be addressed because I'm too scared of what will happen. And you don't want that in your life. So, your first thing is you want to say, where am I too dependent? And it may be the relationship overall, because that's a real key, but also it can be certain areas that you're too dependent. And each of those areas are going to affect the overall, but you may be fine in other areas, but not in some. That's kind of a mix that statement up a little bit, but hopefully it made sense. So your
Is this?
first
Oh, sorry.
is so your first step is to move what's called independence. And you see these, we were talking about babies and kids and stuff just a minute ago. A newborn is just totally dependent on the caregiver. And then that 2-year-old is starting to say, no, I want to do this. And you see that independence coming out. And then you see it multiple times, but you see it as teenagers because they're starting to become their own person. And we have to do that in all our relationships. We have to get to the place that I'm no longer dependent on you. I'm my own person. I want responsibility for myself. and I'm ready to take on that responsibility for myself. Now, will it always be pretty? No. You've seen teenagers where it's not pretty. But it's a step that we have to take. But where we ultimately want to go, in fact, this is how I've titled this one principle: thrive for interdependent relationships. And what that is where you have two parties and both of them have reached that independent stage where they're comfortable who they know who they are, and they are taking responsibility for their beliefs and their behaviors, but they realize that life is more fun together and they can go higher. And that's what, in fact, this is a Stephen Covey concept. This is where I first learned this, that it's called interdependent relationships. We're both comfortable. We are healthy human beings, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically, so to speak, all the areas. But we realize that life is more fun together and we can go further together. And so we become interdependent.
That's beautiful. So it has to be that what I'm understanding is like that foundation is what you're saying early. The more secure of
Yes.
ourselves, that means the more comfortable I am under my skin, the more responsible I am for my behavior,
Yes.
and then the more comfortable the other person is,
Hmm.
with who they are,
Right.
with their responsibilities, and then knowing that life is better together.
Right. Exactly. And I call that principle thrive for interdependent relationships. And it doesn't make sense until you understand what's behind it. But, and you hit this, I'm going to back up a couple paragraphs, but you hit this right on the head, square on the head, and that it is love and value yourselves. And I don't mean in an arrogant way, I don't mean in a selfish way, but I do mean that it's very important because we need to know who we are. We need to know that we're loved. And if you're a person of faith, then you let God's love just flow down through you into all the cells of your body so that every cell in your body knows that God loves you unconditionally and that he values you unconditionally. I don't know if that's a word or not, but he values you a lot more than what you value yourself. And then that naturally overflows in healthy love to other people. And another concept of that, I'm going to go a different direction just a minute. And that if I don't have that healthy love for myself, if I don't feel like I'm lovable or even likable, then it doesn't matter how much anybody else, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a friend, or anybody pours love into me. I'm like what do I want to say? Um, anyway, where they have the holes in the bottom. Steve, no, that's not it either, but you know what I mean.
Like a
But
sister, yeah, like a
yeah. They're pouring love into me, but if there's holes in the bottom of me and it just runs out. So you want that foundation where you know that you're important, that you're loved, that you're valued. In fact, I've got another saying that I think says it pretty well, and that is the degree in which I love and value myself sets the thermostat for how high all my other relationships can go. Let me say that again. The,
yes.
the degree in which I value myself, and you put love in there too, love and value myself sets the thermostat for how high my other relationships can go. And that's true with anybody, any relationship. But let's just talk about that for a minute in the marriage, because if both parties have that deep love and value of themselves, and it's a healthy one, it's not arrogant, then think how high that relationship can go.
Yeah, but you know what comes to my mind here, because that's what I was thinking at the beginning of our talk, is like if we go in, like if we have an argument or there's a
Mhm.
disagreement,
Right,
and if your behavior that you have has been taught to go for a drink, go binge and some carbs,
right,
like do something unhealthy,
right.
you're not loving yourself. You're not valuing yourself
So,
because you're harming your body, you're harming your health.
mhm,
So if we act wise, you know,
mhm,
like you gave us at first, you told us about the wise, the foolish, and the evil.
right,
So if we have an argument, we have a misunderstanding. So if I value myself enough, is like I'm not gonna go after a drink to suppress my
right,
anger.
right,
I'm not gonna go and binge, eating 5 pizzas or ice cream, and like because like I'll be wise enough to be like, okay, this is just a misunderstanding. I value my health enough not to
right,
drink, eat a lot of ice cream and pizza just because I'm mad and I'm gonna take it out on my own self. I'm gonna damage
right.
my own self just because there was a misunderstanding. So that's how I am. That it's just another way for us to understand that we need to be wiser. And one of your principles that you're talking is like begin to love and value yourself a little bit.
Yeah, that's the
Appreciate.
number one principle.
Okay.
Number
Oh,
one.
there's more. Okay.
Yeah, I've got 5. I've got 5.
Oh, okay. Wow. Wow. Uh, do you have time for one more? Oh, well, hang on. It's let us know how we can reach, like, find you. Where can our audience find you if they want to know more about you? I know you have a book. Share with us your book. I ordered it. I didn't get it on time.
Now, this is the book that I wrote, and I actually published it about 5 years ago. And it basically is my personal growth journey that I went on about 25, 30 years ago, and the things that were keeping me stuck, and then the things that helped me fly. And yes, I'm doing some masterminds. I'll eventually put the course on, and I'm actually got several things that I'm working on as I have time. But I've narrowed these things down to 5 principles, and I'll share them here in just a minute. But I think you have the link, Pal, that you can share with the audience to sign up for a mastermind that I'm going to be starting a new one. I'm in the middle of one right now, but I'm going to start a new one February 24th. And then we do record it, so it's during the day. But if you want to, jump on when you get home, I can send you recordings and stuff like that. But we go through in depth all these different 5 principles. And I am on social media, and I think you have those too, because I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Those are probably the big ones. And I do post every day and talk about different things that a lot of them actually come from the book. So if you want to say, oh, I wonder what's in that book, then jump on the social media and you can get a taste of that and go from there. But I
Thank
want
you.
to, I want to jump. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say that I'm going to share your link on my YouTube channel after
Okay.
this interview is it's done. I'm going to uh, post it in there as well as your social media. So anybody that wants to join her mastermind is February 24th. How many days is this mastermind?
What we do is we spread it over 5 weeks,
Oh, okay.
and we do 1 hour a week.
Okay.
And so I think it's the end of March that it would end up that, but
Okay.
like I said, if come when you can, and I can send you the recordings for the ones that you miss. But we do talk about each of those. And like we said, principle one, number one is to love and value yourself because that's so important. In fact, as you were talking about going and binging on pizza or drink and stuff like that, this question came to my mind. In fact, one book that I even just read this last year in January is, and some of your readers may be familiar with it. It's Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Now, this is not a faith-based book, but there was lots of good things in there. I want to leave you with one question that he asked, or that he said to ask, is basically it. If I truly loved myself, would I do X or blank? So if I truly loved myself, would I binge on this pizza? Would I go out and get too many drinks? Would I da da da? And so it's just a simple thing, just to jog your memory. If I truly love myself, would I? And then principle number 2 is to dig for the root cause. And in a nutshell, that we've heard that before, but what you want to watch your symptoms, the anger, the bitterness, the withdrawing, those are all symptoms. Comparing is another symptom. You want to watch those because they're the lights on the dashboard that tells you something's wrong. But then go deeper and say, what is the root cause? And then, like I said, most of us have heard that or at times. I'm going to take it deeper for you. And that is most of the time, those root cause are in the unmet expectations within the, we have either conscious or subconscious relationships that I expect out of you and you respect out of me, and they may not be the same. And so if you can get where you can communicate about the unmet expectations, that's key.
Clear communication.
Right. But it takes a while to get where you're vulnerable enough to that. It takes a while for you to even realize what your expectations are that aren't being met. And then for your other party, whether it's your spouse or your kids, what is their expectations? And then number 3, we already talked about, and that is striving for interdependent relationships. And then 4, we've actually talked about 4 too. We just didn't call it that. But that's the part of understanding that you're going to be working with wise people, foolish people, or evil people. And the strategy is different for each one.
Oh.
And then number 5, it's knowing how to prepare for talking, that whole communication piece. You know, if you know there's an issue that needs to be addressed, how do you go about talking about it? Because if you come in really being insecure or being,
like
yeah, being aggressive,
yeah.
you're going to get nothing. You're going to get that in response. And so this is another Stephen Covey thing. I'm bringing out quite a bit of Stephen Covey today, aren't I?
I love him.
Yeah, he's good. But seek to understand, then be understood. So get secure within yourself so that you can go in and say, I really want to know where you're coming from. And Stephen Covey says it, understand their point of view so well that you can not mimic it back to them, but you can tell them in your own words what they said. And then they feel understood. And then more than likely, they're going to be able to listen to you to understand where you're coming from. Sometimes this is a process. I know sometimes with my husband and I, it doesn't happen in one deal. It takes several to get to that place, depending on how deep a subject it is. But then,
Yes.
you know, there's that things. And there are definitely times when you have to quit a relationship. You know, these are principles, and they're good ones. I'm thinking of one of our, well, actually, it's our retirement guy, and he says some retirements can be saved and some of them can't. And the same is true about relationships. You know, some of them have to go by the wayside, but there's lots of things that you have to think about as far as making that decision. And that decision process is part of what we talk about in that 5th principle too. So in a nutshell, those are the 5.
Okay. And you know, whenever you're talking about there's different modalities, like modes, that's how I try to, to teach. Is you can come into like very authoritarian mode, and they're not going to listen. You know, same thing at school. If I try to tell my students, teach my students, where it's like, it's like they're not going to listen.
No.
You know, if I try to be too humble, you know, like, oh, you know, like very inferior, they're not going to get the message across. But if we come from a neutral, like a neutral state, uh,
Right.
emotional state, where it's like grounded, then then we're more likely to deliver that message.
Yes.
So this is so important, you know, like with our husbands, our
Hmm.
children, employees, co-workers. If you come from a neutral mode, you're going to be able to deliver the message, because not every, you know, there's people that are very auditory, there's people that are very visual, there are people that are kinesthetic as well. So if we're on the neutral mode, we're more likely able to deliver the message.
And pay attention to what's going on in their world. You know, if you hit your husband up right when he gets home from work at the door and says, "We got to talk about this." Whoa.
Whoa.
He's gonna say, "I just want to go out the door and not come back." You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, give him a chance to unwind from the stress of the day. And one thing we haven't talked about yet on this is that I was in HR for 10 years, over 10 years. I was an HR manager and director, so I got to see professional relationships and got to watch them. And there's stress in the workplace. There's absolute stress in the workplace. Now you
So do
can
you think,
no,
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I
No,
was
you
going to
go.
ask you, is there a correlation between like your boss and how much you like your job, or is that just a myth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we spend so much time at work. Yeah. Our number one, if you are married, then your number one human relationship needs to be your spouse. They're number one, their number one priority. But at the same time, you have to provide for your family. And so you can't, you've got to spend a lot of time at work. Now, everybody decides what that time is, and there's lots of factors in there. And so we're not going to get into that piece of it. Um, but you spend a lot of time with your supervisor and your coworkers. They become your second family. And the closer you can, well, I shouldn't say that, but the healthier those relationships can be, the more you are going to have job satisfaction. You know, and I've had good supervisors and I've had bad supervisors, but I feel like for the most part, I've been able to work with them and get them into a healthier relationship with me. Uh, but you want that, and you want to be able to be vulnerable with them. You want to be able to you want an open door so that you can come in and say, "This is an idea I have. Is it something we could work for?" And it goes vice versa. And like you were talking about the neutral tone and with your students and stuff, if you are a supervisor and supervise people, the more you can respect and show that respect and get buy-in, the more your employees are going to work better for you. I mean, it's the same with your students. If they feel like they're on this, you know, they know you're the authority in the classroom. Don't get me wrong. I've been in the classroom myself. It was before I learned all this stuff, by the way, but I understand. And my husband was actually in education for decades. But the more your students feel like you respect them and you're on their team and you want to see them grow and develop with their potential, the more they're going to do for you. It's the same with employees. It's also the same with our kids, even though I think sometimes our kids almost show the negative side more than they do the positive at times, but not always. But
Now,
that's what. Go ahead.
go ahead. Well, I was, no, you talk about kids, and I was like, one of the things that I'm so impressed as well, and I think it's a blessing, is like you and your husband have a marriage for almost 50 years. And
Uh-huh.
then you have two children, they're adults now,
Right.
but their marriage is also going, like, I think the oldest one is probably about to be 19 years married.
Yeah, or maybe it's 19 going on 20, somewhere in that, yes. And then the other one is like 16 or 17. And so, yes, they're in stable relationships.
Did you play a big role in this uh, blessing?
I guess so. I would, you know what I think it is? It's a legacy that they learned.
Oh, that's sweet.
It's what they watched, and actually their grandparents, both, well, I can't think of the other side. That's not true for the other, well, I don't know. Their grandparents actually had 50-year-old marriages for the most part too.
Wow, what a blessing.
And so they have that concept of commitment. And no, I don't know my kids' marriages well enough to know what the issues are, and I don't want to because that's not the responsibility, and it's not even healthy for, in-laws to know that or mother and dad to know that, but like I said, no marriage is perfect,
Yeah.
and
But you influence, and that to me is like, wow, that's amazing, because like you said, there's stable marriage for for that long, and you're an
right,
example.
right,
So that's beautiful.
yeah, and I do think it's part of that legacy. I wish that, how I told you that I didn't think I was good at relationships, and I wasn't. So I wish I would have been healthier, me healthier, to be able to, with my relationship with myself when the kids were growing up. I must have been healthy enough to get them where they are. But in retrospect, looking back, I can say, oh, I wish I could do that all over again, but yet I don't really want to do that.
Now, you also are a survivor, and you don't, like, you don't, on your notes you say that you are a cancer survivor, but you don't identify with that story, like, as in, you don't
Hmm.
trying to, it's not part of your identity as a victim, but
Right.
how can you share to any of our audience right now that maybe one spouse, or they're in a relationship with one of them, is going through a hard time in their health, how to overcome that stage in life?
I'm just going to talk for a little bit because this is near and dear to my heart. And you may have to cut me off if I ramble too much. But yes, I'm a 31-year survivor of breast cancer. And yes, and back then it was at a stage where they honestly didn't know if I'd make it. It was iffy. Um, and so we had some touch and go there for a while. And then this last year, just about a year ago, my daughter got diagnosed with breast cancer. And we had several God moments because of my history. And no, we don't have the BRCA gene. According to tests, there's no genetic component, but we aren't believing that at the moment. But because of my history, they watched her really close. And so they caught it extremely small. And I can remember talking to her and her husband about 2 weeks after the diagnosis, because when you first get a diagnosis like this, you basically fall apart and you need that time. It's a grieving process. And then you start saying, okay, what do I have to do? What do I need? What are the steps? I remember them looking at me and they said, this is going to define me for the rest of my life. And I said, in some ways, yes, because you always have to say you're a survivor. But I said, in other ways, it's a chapter. And that's what I would say for any of your listeners that are going through this. It's a chapter. I said, when you guys look at me, is the first thing you think about is that I had breast cancer? And they thought, I mean, you could tell the wheels were moving. And they said, no. I said, it'll be the same for you. I joked with my daughter. I was diagnosed at 36. And so I hit my 30-year mark, oh, whatever that is. Anyway, it was a year or two ago. And I joked with my daughter because she wasn't diagnosed till 40. I said, you're going to have to wait till you're 70 to have your 30-year anniversary. But she needed
Yeah.
something like that because she needed that future, and she needed to know that this is just a season. And it was a hard chapter. Her hair's grown back now, and it's as cute as a button.
Aw. Yes, sending her so much love. Yes. And
Yeah.
she has a story to share, you
She does.
know, a
She does.
story. And that's why this program, it's here. It's like to bring contrast to our beautiful audience because sometimes we get trapped in our everyday life and we
Yes.
forget to truly live to enjoy life because we're in survival mode. So
Yeah.
with stories like you, oh my goodness, almost 50 years, of marriage. Oh, what is she doing different? Let me see. And sharing your story now about your daughter's story, then is a gift for all of us to wake up a little bit and be like, oh, okay, I can implement that into my life. It's just a chapter. It is just a chapter, but I can see ahead through this storm, but I can see ahead it gets brighter. In any of our beautiful people right now who's might be having a hard time in their marriage or in another relationship in their health, know that it's just a chapter. That's what our beautiful guest is inviting us to see today. It is just a chapter.
And even if you've gone through a divorce, and I know that's tough. I haven't had it. But to have that relationship, that close relationship, it is a chapter. And I just encourage you to go through the grieving process because that's what you need, because it's very similar to a death, and then come out stronger on the other side.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And I was going to ask you that, what do you have a message for a beautiful audience who have not been able to, you know, get to that season of their life where they're like, oh, I'm enjoying my relationship. Maybe here is a message that just came to me. What belief are you having? I hope you are thinking I am worthy of an awesome relationship. Because
Yeah.
it could be a belief that is limiting you back, limiting you from
Mhm.
going after it. So I invite you today to analyze your learned behavior and your beliefs to see if that's stopping you from having that beautiful relationship. Maybe that's stopping you from finding true love. Maybe it's stopping you from truly opening up to those around you and build those beautiful, friendships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, like we were talking about the wise, the foolish, and the evil. If you're dealing with somebody evil, in fact, actually, where I got that concept was from Dr. Henry Cloud in his Necessary Endings, which is an awesome book. And so, if your audience wants to go and grab that book and read some more in there, but I think he calls it if you're dealing with somebody evil, then you use lawyers and guns. And by guns, he means like police, the restraining orders, and those type things, because that's just where they are. Now, of course, if they're wise, you've got a great relationship and you're going to be able to do that interdependent relationship. But if either one of you is being more foolish than wise at the moment, then you have decisions to make. And both of you have decisions to make. And it may be your partner that has decided to leave and you don't have anything to say about it and you have to let them go. But you work on you in the process and don't let that pull you down. You take the time to really love yourself. And I would encourage, if you're in that place, to go get that book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And I can't remember the author right now, but yeah, I'll just leave it at that because he actually is very honest in that book because he had a breakup and how it affected him and what he went through. Um, and I will say, too, I don't have mine done yet, but I do have on the parking lot, so to speak, that I want to do is take my own journey of loving myself and get it in at least an ebook.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The time's almost up. But what would be, I mean, I so appreciate you're gonna have to come back. I'm gonna have you back again.
Oh, we
If
could talk
you
forever.
yes, yes. It's like I know we need so much more awareness of how to
Mhm.
build relationships. I mean, I am guilty of it. It's an area of my life. I don't know if it's because I'm an introvert, because I'm an immigrant for 19 years, and then I adopted that belief that people might not like immigrants. That I'm like, it's like very hard. It's been hard to truly build friendships and strong relationships. And I think it's me, it's like it's that limiting belief that I had, and I need to
Mhm.
work on it. I'm honest, it's an area of my life that I am seeking to grow. And, I would love to have you back so that we can bring awareness because I'm not the only one. I'm not the only immigrant probably with that limiting belief. So, yes, I would love to have you back. So, we have covered several nuggets, golden nuggets. Thank you so much. What is your final tip that you would like to leave us with today?
I don't know exactly what overall, but I'm gonna, from what you said, one of my spiritual mentors said that um, I know I really like myself when somebody, or that it feels like I'm likable, when somebody doesn't like me. And my first response is, what's wrong with them?
I love that.
Rather
Thank
than
you.
saying, oh, I'm not likable, because that's our
What's
first response.
what's wrong with me?
Yeah, what's wrong with me?
Uh,
And it's what's wrong with them.
thank you so much. I know we're out of time,
Right.
and I so appreciate you. We're gonna have you back because it's like this was like it went by so fast, and I know you have so much to share. So, any of you all that you think this information can help a friend, can help someone else, please share the video. Like it is on my YouTube channel, Paola Guthrie. uh, Remember that you're the only one that give power to your talents. You're the only one who gives life to your dreams.
Yes.
This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Blessings to you all and happy Valentine's.
Yes.